Dearly beloved, we are gathered here because that sick mother, Ed Buck, has done it again. Democratic donor arrested after a third man overdoses at his West Hollywood home. A third black man. They're not saying who it is, but I guarantee he's black. Prominent Democratic donor and LGBT activist Ed Buck has been charged with running a drug house. That's it, not attempted murder. None of that. Right? You are injecting people with drugs, causing their death, and not once have you been charged with attempted murder. Okay. Running a drug house after a man overdosed last week at his West Hollywood home. The third overdose there since 2017. The Los Angeles County District Attorney Office announced Tuesday night the unnamed man survived while the other two men died. Buck, 65, is accused in court documents of being a violent, dangerous sexual predator who targeted men, but I'm going to add black gay men, made vulnerable by addiction and homelessness by administering them large doses of narcotics as part of his sexual fetishes, okay? Prosecutors say he continued to inject the men with drugs even after two deaths at his home, which occurred July 2017 and July 2019. Why did you inject two men already and you still get to walk free? And now that a third man has overdosed at your house, they not charge you with you attempted murder yet. They charge you with running a drug house. Ain't that about a... See, while we arguing about who's attracted to who, members of your LGBT community that have melanin in their skin are being targeted and killed. And nobody is talking about it but the black people, non-members of the LGBTQ. Your own community doesn't give a fuck that this man keeps doing this to y'all. But we care because you are our family. I may not understand everything. I may not understand these 100 genders and understand the lingo. I don't want to teach it to children. I don't understand it. But I love you like my brother, like my sister, like whatever you want to be called. You still black. And I'm still going to talk about people that are killing you. I don't have to understand it. I know that murder is wrong, no. Okay. After the most recent overdose, Buck is charged with maintaining a drug house, battery causing serious injury, and administering methamphetamine, all felonies. No attempted murder charge. The two deaths remain under investigation. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office spokesman said via email, I remain deeply concerned for the safety of these people whose lives circumstances may make them more vulnerable to criminal predators. Los Angeles County District Attorney Jackie Lacey said in a statement, bullshit you are. Because if you really gave a fuck, any fucks, a half a fuck, y'all would have arrested him after the first one. Okay, maybe not after the first one. How about after the second one? Oh, no. Or how about after the third one that got away? With this new evidence, I authorize the filing of criminal charges against Ed Buck. Don't act like you give a fuck now. It's just so crazy you can't turn a blind eye no more. That's what it is. Prosecutors will ask a judge to set a bond at $4 million Wednesday morning to ask to stop this terrifying saga of predatory behavior, they wrote. The defendant's predatory acts and willful disregard for black human life, because they just got human life here, but it's not about human life, it's about black human life, must be stopped before another life is lost. An attorney for Ed Buck did not immediately respond to a request for comment Tuesday night. Buck, a former fashion model, Sashay Chante, he is a former fashion model and well-known LGBT activist. I knew he was an LGBT activist, and I knew he was a Republican before he was a Democrat, but I was unaware that he was a fashion model. Okay. He has donated thousands to Democrats, including Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Rep. Ted Louis. Said earlier this year he would donate more than $18,000 in contributions he received from Buck to LGBTQ and African American civil rights organizations. Until the first man's death at his home in 2017, Buck served on the Stonewall Democratic Club steering committee and also ran for the West Hollywood City Council. Okay? Making policy. Some activists started to demand Buck's arrest after the deaths of 2 black men in his home. Oh, they finally saying that somebody's black. In the first case, 26-year-old Jamel Moore died of methamphetamine overdose in Buck's apartment in July 2017. He was found naked on a mattress in the living room with syringes, sex toys, and other drug paraphernalia nearby. Okay? And still, Ed Buck was not arrested. And they know he's the one who injected him with the drugs. The death was ultimately ruled accidental. But Moore's mother, Letitia Nixon, drew scrutiny to the case after questioning whether Buck may have administered the drugs to her son. In his journal, the Los Angeles Times reported, Moore appeared to write, "I've become addicted to the drugs. And worse one at that, Ed Buck is the one to thank. He gave me my first injection of crystal meth." I remember reading excerpts from that journal, and it was super, super sad. Like, to hear this man's inner thoughts before his death was heartbreaking. 1 year after Moore's death, prosecutors announced that they did not have enough evidence to file charges against Ed Buck, even though they found the body in his house in that condition. They didn't have enough evidence. Boy, when the defendant is black, they don't need evidence, do they? But here, they don't have sufficient evidence. And where is the LGBTQ? Why y'all not protesting about this? Why y'all not on their case about this? The second man died 6 months later in January 2019. Timothy Dean, 55, was found in strikingly similar circumstances, half naked, with his legs resting on a living room mattress and the rest of his body on the floor. As in Moore's case, syringes and sex toys and other drug paraphernalia were found strewn around the room, prosecutors said. Again, and still. Outrage exploded over the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office's previous decision to decline to charge Buck. Within 6 weeks, 30,000 people signed a petition demanding his arrest, led by the social justice activist group Color of Change. It didn't say LGBTQ, Color of Change. Nixon filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Buck and the district attorney, arguing that Dean wouldn't have died had Buck been charged with her son's death. True tea. She accused Buck of preying on black men and soliciting sex from them, only to force them into drug-fueled sexual encounters while they were dangerously intoxicated. And she accused prosecutors of failing to more aggressively investigate Buck because he was a wealthy, politically connected white man with vulnerable black victims. If the dead body of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white man was found in the home of an older black man, he'd be lucky enough to even make it to the police station alive. Come on, talk that talk, said Hussein Turk, Nixon's attorney. The Los Angeles Times reported Buck was also not charged in Dean's death. And his attorney, Seymour Amster, has repeatedly insisted that Buck had nothing to do with either man's death, arguing that both were tragic accidents. But on Tuesday, prosecutors echoed Nixon's accusations, saying Buck's malevolent behavior led to the 2 men's death, in motion to set his bail at $4 million, which is nothing for this man. That's like $4. Okay, maybe 40. Predatory acts culminating with the 3rd victim's near-fatal overdose last week. Using the bait of narcotics, money, and shelter, the defendant lures these vulnerable victims to his home. Prosecutors wrote in the motion, from his home in a position of power, Buck manipulates his victims into participating in sexual fetishes. These fetishes also include supplying and personally administering dangerously large doses of narcotics to his victims. In the 3rd case, prosecutors say Buck administered one of these dangerous methamphetamine doses to Joe Doe on September 4th. Doe left Buck's apartment to get medical attention, fearing he was overdosing. But Doe returned to Buck's apartment the next week. Why? That's what I don't understand, y'all. Why? Why would you go back? I guess you're on drugs and you addicted. Okay. I guess you can't help it. You're sick. Ugh. That's why the police, the authorities, should have shut this place down. They would have had no place to go. But Doe returned to Buck's apartment the next week on September 11th. That day, Buck injected Doe with another dangerous dose of meth, prosecutors say. Doe felt himself overdosing again. But this time, Buck refused to render aid. He stands over them to render aid to Doe and instead thwarted Doe's attempts to get help. According to the motion, the man finally fled Buck's apartment to call 911 from a nearby gas station. He was transported to a hospital. Prosecutors said that the Buck full scope of his consent and malicious behavior is unknown. All right, this is getting long. So I just want to end it off by showing you some of the I'm not even gonna say some. I got 2 comments from 2 trans women, and they were upset with me. And one of them started kind of lying and making up things that I never said. So full disclosure, I'm going to show you her whole conversation, and I'll show you my whole respond back to her before I blocked her. And what I want you to notice is that when she did not like what I said, she said, fuck black people. Like, she basically went on like a tirade and was just like, fuck black people, fuck black this, black. And, you know, she doesn't care about us. See, at the end of the day, I can't wash this off. I can't pretend I'm not black. I can't put my blackness in the closet. And neither can you. And for that reason, I am going to keep shedding a light on people who mistreat us, black people, regardless of sexual orientation or how they identify. Because regardless of any of those things, you are my family. You don't have to like me, but I love you.
Ed Buck left his Los Angeles home overnight in the back of a police car. The 65-year-old is charged with injecting drugs into a man, but police have eyed the powerful political insider for more than 2 years.
It's unfortunate that it's taken a 3rd overdose for the LA Sheriff's Department to finally act. We believe that 3rd overdose could have been avoided.
In January, angry crowds gathered outside Buck's apartment after 55-year-old Timothy Dean was found dead of an overdose. In July 2017, 26-year-old Jamel Moore died there in similar circumstances.
I'm not okay with people dying in his house and people not, and people like coming over here and dying.
In court filings, prosecutors say Buck used the bait of narcotics, money, and shelter to lure victims to his home, where, in a position of power, Buck manipulates his victims into participating in his sexual.
Suspicious death of a man inside the apartment of prominent West Hollywood activist and political donor, 65-year-old Ed Buck.
Found a black male adult who was pronounced dead at the scene.
In July 2017, 26-year-old Jamel Moore was found dead inside Buck's apartment from an apparent methamphetamine overdose. Jamel was working as an escort. Inside his journal, Moore wrote Buck gave him the drugs, got him hooked, claiming he had a fetish for luring young black men into his apartment to test their limits. Since Moore's death, several male escorts allegedly hired by Buck revealed similar stories.
It is suspicious that this has happened twice now.
Buck was never charged in Moore's death, the district attorney citing there wasn't enough evidence. This woman says she's known Ed Buck for more than 30 years. There are always men seen entering the apartment at odd hours.
Sad, I saw the last gentleman go in when I was walking.
I was meant to die at Ed Buck's. I was supposed to be the 2nd person dead at Ed Buck's house.
Jermaine Gagnon is terrified when he sees the shocking similarities between the deaths of 2 black men and his alleged experience with Ed Buck.
He has a type. Young, black, handsome.
The 28-year-old Minnesota native says he met Buck on the dating site Adam for Adam. Their first date, May 2018.
When you first come into the house, you come out of your clothes and you put on his clothes.
Gagnon gave us this video. That's a white mattress on the floor of the living room, and you can see Buck wearing white long johns and a red t-shirt.
We smoked a little bit of crystal meth.
The drugs got more intense.
He said, have you ever tried a point? And I'm like, what's a point? He's like, an injection. You inject crystal meth into your vein. He injected my arm.
Gagnon says the drug made him fly into a rage, and Buck kicked him out of his apartment. Gagnon was paid between $200 and $250.